everybody to True to Soul's Be Wise, meaning be well, be informed, be safe, and be empowered because we all have the capacity. Be Wise was created because we all have questions during this time. And I've been blessed to encounter and get to know a lot of wonderful people who are willing to share their own journeys, their own expertise, their knowledge to answer some of these questions. Now, what I'm going to bring to your attention is a poll that we have going. Please feel free to fill in that poll. It's just so that we get to make this space as relevant to you as an audience as possible. Fill in the poll. It is anonymous. If you have any questions, throw it into the Q&A section. You can feel free to put your feedback for the great stuff that's being shared today into the chat section. Now, if you put your question into the chat section, it may be visible to everyone. So be mindful. If you want a question to go specifically to a panelist or to me, then make sure you note that you are sending that question to me or to the panelist. Otherwise, everyone's going to see it. Okay, so with that said, let's get this party started. We will start with Janelle. She made her way into the space first. Welcome, Janelle. If you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about yourself and your passionate work, please.
Sure. So, like Rita said, my name is Janelle. I am a social worker by training, and I work specifically with families that have young children under the age of 6. My role is to work one-on-one with these families and really provide any kinds of support that they need, whether it's as simple as just having someone to talk to or being connected to other resources in the community. If I can't provide that support, I'll find them someone who can. So I like to think of myself as just going in there, figuring out what they need, just being kind of a blanket support for those families. I really love the aspect of my work that involves meeting people where they're at and working with them in their homes. I think it's great because you really get to connect with people where they're most comfortable and where people can really feel the emotions that they're dealing with. Often folks are dealing with all kinds of things, whether it be challenges with parenting, and people feel disconnected, especially in times like these, where we are isolated. And even though social media is out there and we're supposed to be connecting, it's really, really difficult to really reach out and to share those feelings with others. So part of my role is to encourage families to continue to reach out to one another and to stay connected. We often forget that we're not alone, and that other people feel the same feelings that we do. And so just reminding families that it's important to maintain those connections virtually, and it's important to reach out to friends and family during this time because they can keep us grounded. It's difficult to do that on our own sometimes, so they can remind us of who we are, what we need, connect us to what we need during difficult times like these. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Janelle. Just listening to you calms me right down. It's like, oh. So I can imagine you do a lot of good work in the areas of crisis, coming in to offer people resources and the ability to see things with clarity, and yeah, balance out their home. So thank you for that. Speaking of families, Day, that brings me to you because you got a big house full of a big family, 6 of whom are children. And that's the reason why you're here with us today, is to share some of those goodies as to how you're keeping it together in the midst of, so much that's going on. Please take the floor.
Yeah, a proud parent representative and single parent, work in the business sector, manager, visual artist. So like many of us, I have a lot of facets being juggled in the air and enjoying it most of the time. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very happy to be here to share anything that, as far as I'm going through with regards to coping and suggestions that I've gotten down from others. I'm going to pass it on to you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. And what I really like about what Day presents is often links to resources that makes it readily accessible for people to get information that is valid information, because the internet's a big place. It's a wild, wild west sometimes when it comes to info. And trying to get stuff that doesn't really make you spend more can be tough. So I appreciate that, Day, you having done that before and continuing to do that. I'm going to move on now to Michelle, because as Day was speaking, I just kept picturing like the running around that she does with the little ones, the house and keeping things together and still finding time for herself. The exercise, the movement, and the mental health and the correlation between the two. I'd love for you to touch on that a bit. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, I can imagine you're very busy with 6 children running around. Yeah, the whole theme of keeping it together, one of those concepts that's very, a lot easier said than done, right? And so 2 very valuable tools that I like to use with my clients as well as with myself are exercise and meditation. Now, exercise doesn't have to be this really long, arduous, punishing, sweaty session, right? People get scared off by that. In fact, only 20 minutes of aerobic exercise is really all you need to get the lungs and your muscles going, to get more oxygen to your brain, and that's going to help with the neuron production. So that way you'll have better focus and concentration and better mood. And then, of course, when it comes to meditation, meditation is the ultimate in mindfulness, and it allows you to slow down your thinking, slow down your breathing, and just focus on some calmness, which is a respite right now for most of us. And I'm new to it myself, so I'm still getting the hang of it, but I would recommend it, whether you sit by yourself quietly or you use something that's online right now to have somebody else's voice. It can be very calming and very focusing, which is a really, really good thing right now.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michelle. That meditation piece in conjunction with the movement, I just feel like that's a balance of the mind and the body, which is why I'm really grateful to have you here. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, the keeping it together. Sometimes we do focus on one area and we kind of leave the other one out, and then things kind of go wonky with that other area, and then affects the area that we first worked on. So having both areas represented in here is great. And we actually have a few people to speak on that. And I'll just rotate through the 3 of you, starting with Charlie here, when it comes to education and mental wellness and, taking care of yourself and keeping it together.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm surrounded by so many interesting people. I'm an educator. I've been a high school teacher in the social sciences and parenting classes for a long time, but I saw that there was a void in mental health, and we're trying so hard to infuse it into the education system, but I see some voids. And so I decided to go and get educated as a clinical social worker so that I could help kind of piece things back together. So that's my vision. And I'm also a mom of 3 boys, so I understand what it's like to do the distance learning as I'm trying to teach my students. And it goes back to what Janelle said, is connection. It's always about connection. And I also do a podcast called Advancing Humanity, because I need this vision to go to the masses. We have to reach more people. And so everybody that I interview who has any kind of expertise or story that's compelling always goes back to connection. And so that's where I'm trying to reach people. And I look at the teen brain, and I know, Michelle, you have a lot of expertise with the brain and how it functions in our health and wellness. So it always comes back to connection, health, and innovation. And that's kind of my guiding mantra. And it really works for everybody. So I'm so grateful to be here. I can't wait to continue this conversation. I'm glad that we could slow down and be able to do this together.
Yeah, I have to say that that's one of the silver linings that I see in this entire situation. Many of us are not ready to discuss silver linings in the midst of what's still happening. It doesn't harm to mention that. If you have the wherewithal to see the silver linings, to just mention them, because for people who are trying to find hope and try to find some way to balance. It doesn't serve for all of us to be spinning together. We all, it really helps when there's someone that comes with a bit of, okay, here's something to look at, something different than, the hard stuff, the conflicts. And that takes an ability to understand that, there's something more than just what's right in front of us. The ability to communicate that is something that I'm relying on Helen to talk about a little bit because that's what she's focusing on today, communication. You know, sometimes the very words that we use can make a situation really spin further out of control and make someone feel even more anxious or stressed out, or we can actually de-escalate a situation and bring someone some calm. If not with our voice like Janelle, then perhaps with the words we choose to use. So Helen, can you speak a bit about that now, speaking and communicating in the midst of all of this?
Okay. Would you like me to share my screen now or?
Sure, sure. If you would take a few
Okay.
minutes and talk first, and then we could get to that screen for sure.
Sure. Yeah, one of the key pieces is communication. And right now, with all of us kind of being almost on top of each other 24/7, in many instances, it's how we share, how we communicate, and how we talk to others. So I wanted to share my little piece here. Which is about communicating effectively. And just give me one sec, sorry. So we see here, this is actually not my work. This is the work of Jack Gibbs, who talks about the sunny and the cloudy aspect of communication. And I just want to draw your attention to the right side of the screen, which is about the supportive behaviors. And that really is about using language, not just the words, but using language as a way of minimizing conflict, using language as a way of being supportive, of kind of building up, of being respectful of the other individual. So in his model, he talks about defensive on the one hand, which is negative, and it really causes people to want to step back. But I know I don't have much time, so I want to focus more on the supportive side, which is about describing in your messages. So being clear and very specific about what you're saying. With the problem orientation, that's more about posing an invitation, sort of being more collaborative in your communication style. And then what he means by spontaneity is being forthright with your message, of not having like a hidden agenda. And of course, the empathy piece is really about respecting the other person's feelings and thoughts and where they are. And equality, seeing the other individual as on an equal footing, regardless of age. And provisionalism, not really having an agenda, kind of coming at it from, looking at it from a point of view and trying to encourage the other person to share. So if we're more sort of supportive in our communication, then we can strive and maintain a supportive environment. And if there's more to that, I'd be happy to talk more as we continue.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me see here. There we go.
Thank
so
you.
That, no problem at all. So when it comes to the communicating piece, you know what? I sometimes say exactly what's in my head, and it doesn't always come out right. And that list that you just showed us, if you guys wonder why I keep looking up and around, because I have questions that are coming in from other platforms as well, and I'm keeping track of them so I could share it with the floor. But what I was getting to is about the stuff that comes out of my mouth sometimes does not always come out as supportive, even though my intention is for, to be supportive. And I think when it's in my head that it's pretty good, and it gets out there and I'm like, that's not what I meant to say. So, or that's not what my intention was with those words. But the thing is, what I found, just to extrapolate or to move further from that, is that we can't always control people's response to what it is that we do say. Even when our intention is great, and we use words that we think should, convey it, sometimes the person is dealing with a filter or has something else that's on their mind, and they're just going to take it and beat you with it. So in those kinds of circumstances, where you're feeling like, okay, there's nothing, it just feels like you're closed in, there's not much you can do. What do you do then? And what I'm going to do is bring that down to Mark. And the reason why is because Mark has been a panelist with us before, and just was amazing with what he shared with his experience and his stories. But I know that in that life experience, there were times when you wanted to convey something, about what your life experience was, and just people weren't listening. People weren't hearing you. You were trying to say one thing, and people were getting another. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and what you're about, how you kept it and keep it together.
Okay. So thank you, Kata. Thank you for inviting me back. And I'm
Absolutely.
really happy to take part with the other panelists. And I want to thank whoever's out there who is joining us. I'm sure that the questions are going to be great, and we're going to learn from you guys just as much as you might learn from us. So real quick, my background, I spent 15 years in policing, and it was the dream job. I loved it. And closer to the end of my time as a police officer, I experienced a lot of trauma. And the trauma wasn't job-related trauma, it was personal trauma. And when we talk about keeping it together, so I use a lot of different analogies, but for this one, I would say, let's think about a block of cheese. And we're all familiar with a little bit of mold on the cheese. And we're all aware that we can cut that part out and keep the rest of the cheese. And I think this is a strategy for me that when I hit a spot of experiencing too much trauma, I quickly assess my life and figure out what do I need to get rid of so that I can continue on the journey. The journey might be slower. It might veer off the path I intended, but sometimes we have to cut a part out to save the whole. So my passion that I came to learn wasn't just policing. It's evolved now to being really passionate about helping frontline workers and their mental health and giving them a platform in which they can speak about their own mental health and their own struggles so that they can be better servers for the public, right? It's not a topic that is easily addressed. A lot of first responders don't like it, and they're uncomfortable. So you have to lead by example. You have to explain, you have to share with them that you mirror a lot of what it is they experience. And I loved the slide that talked about communication, right? And I think that when we speak from a place of empathy, we give people a space to build their resilience. And so that's a lot of where I like to sit is the stories that we can share don't make us the center of the story. We're not the center of the story when we share these things. What we're doing is we're saying to people, we're just an example. So just look at us, not because we're asking you to empathize with us. We're asking people to empathize with the circumstances in which we happen to find ourselves. So that's where I like to come from, is a place of just allowing people to use us as a tool for learning, not the come here and get a hug, I feel bad for you. Don't feel bad for me. I'm okay, I'm resilient. Take from it what you can use to then be more resilient in your own life. So thank you. I look forward to this today.
Oh, so beautifully said. Oh my gosh. This is why I ask you back, Mark. So the empathy, a direct answer to that question, how do you convey what it is that you need? How do we let people know? And how do we share? I'm an advocate for sharing from the same space that Mark is talking about, where I'm sharing my journey and knowing that there may be something in there that someone can take from. This is not a hierarchical type of, I will show you how it's done. You follow my method and you will be successful in life. It's not that. And, I find that the people who are coming here into this space to share are very much in the vibe of the same thing. It's like, hey, I got some stuff. I've been through some stuff, and I just want to share that with you, and take what you need and leave what you don't need. So the piece that Mark was talking about, with regards to the empathy, I'd love to move on to Charlie on that topic, because for mental health and mental wellness, self-compassion, which a regular panelist on here, Steffi Black, often talks about, kindness to self, is a huge piece of that. And we had a comment from Facebook that talked about, let me see if I can find it here. Of course, it's gone. Where is it? There we go. To keep it together, using small goals was a recommendation. Don't create this huge list, this almost self-sabotage list that you probably won't get done, but now you're going to put yourself in the position of saying, I have to get it done by tomorrow. Being kind to oneself means being realistic. So can you expand a little bit about how you talk about mental health and self-care, Charlie?
Absolutely. Thanks for that question. It's an important one, especially, Mark, I work with people who have trauma, and I see a lot of trauma showing up in my students' behavior, and we often treat that in a punitive way. We punish people. And so right now, I think it's so important to at least just use that empathy to understand what other people might be going through. Even if we don't really understand it, we can step into that situation with them to feel what they're feeling. And that's a part of it. A lot of times we tell people to suck it up, push things down, push them away. It's important that we feel our feelings in a safe space. And so that's what I welcome everybody to do, is attempt that, especially when you're overwhelmed. I mean, you're a mother, you're trying to have a job and manage your kids. And by the way, there's pressure from your teachers to have due dates or get something in. And there's a big shameful part to that. That's really difficult. If we can't meet those expectations, that feels really shameful to us. So empathizing with other people, and don't try to fix things for them. Just sit with them and understand them and let them feel those feelings in front of you without being uncomfortable about it. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Charlie. Another question, well, how do you create a safe space in an unsafe environment? Does anyone want to take that? Mark, I see you nodding. Yes. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. So I want to touch a little bit on Charlie's statement first, and then come back to the safe space. So, as I said, we do a lot of presentations with police officers, and two of the key things that we do with officers, first thing is there's a nature of us always being comparative in life. And so with mental health, a lot of times when somebody says, hey, I got diagnosed with depression, our natural tendency is, how come? What happened? And we want to hear the criteria to then make an assessment as non-medical people to go, oh, okay. And so what we do with officers is we talk about the notion of, if we sprinkled a bunch of popcorn kernels in a pot with oil and we turned on the oven, or the stove, sorry, as that oil heats up, do we know which kernel is going to pop? And the answer is we have no idea. But what we do know is that when we apply all those kernels to the same pressure, some pop and some don't. And we don't blame either one as to why they pop or don't. We accept that some pop and some don't. So that's the first piece, is that when we're dealing with mental health, it's not important for us to come to a conclusion that, oh, what they went through satisfies us. That's not important. The reality is kernels pop and kernels don't. And so it's really important that we do that, because that begins the creation of a safe space. One of the things we talk about with police officers is we tell them that there is no such thing as a safe space. And policing should know it better than anybody. And so the analogy we use that is that you can walk down a street, any one of us can walk down a street, we're walking on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden we see a person, and the person gives us this spidey sense that we should cross the street. It's not the space that made us feel safe or unsafe, it's the person. And so safe spaces, we need to change how we look at this and say, it's not spaces that make us safe, it's people, right? So what we're looking for are safe people, not safe spaces. So, you know, everybody that's on this panel, I would bet is a safe person. And wherever we go with any of us, a person would feel safe by the very nature of being with one of us. They would say, okay, you know what, I might be in an environment in which some of these people I don't know, and they might judge me, but because I'm with Michelle, because I'm with Janelle, because I'm with Di, Helen, Kata, and Charlie, I'm safe because I'm with one of these people, right? And I think it's really important for us to encourage people to not wait for a safe space, but take it upon themselves to be the safe person that can then bring about a safe space.
Mm, thank you, thank you, and that's a great response to the question. And I find that when it comes to safe spaces, there are so many perspectives. You know, as you know, also a former police officer, we tend to be that person that people will come to perceive to be being perceived to be as a safe person. In circumstances where there is more than or less than what's necessary for one to feel safe, even in striving to you know, be that safe person. And I'll direct this towards you, Janelle, where there's someone who may be in a home environment where the options, let's say, are fewer to find, to you know, find a safety within the home. What do you recommend, and what do you say to people who are in those types of situations? Because actually, I believe what Mark is saying is actually very true. Being that what is necessary, what we're looking for is very much the truth. The other piece is that some people are not ready to be that. Some people are not ready, and they're looking for that external safety.
Absolutely. So I love what Mark said about finding safe people. I think that's so important because the reality is that finding a safe space is not always possible. Homes are not always safe, and we see that now more than ever with the rise of domestic violence and child abuse due to COVID. So it's really important to help individuals find their safe person. I always encourage people to just reach out to someone and say hi. Um, Chances are that you will come across that safe person within your network of friends, or even reaching out to a local organization saying, hey, can I come and volunteer for the day? Can I, or what do you have to offer? What can I be a part of? Just reaching out and letting people know that you're there. You don't have to say much. You don't have to say what you need. When you come across that right safe person, they'll know. They'll connect to you. They'll form that relationship with you, and you'll be able to find some safety and some support. I think we often feel like we have to do it ourselves. We have to find that safety on our own. And I think it's really important to remember that we are a community. We should continue to connect and rely on one another, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's, in fact, in times like these, it's more important than ever before to remain connected and to find that safety and security in the people that are around us, whether they're around us physically or virtually. You know, that safety can come in someone from halfway across the country who can make that right call or connect you to that right support. So just reach out, just stay connected, and don't feel like you have to do things on your own.
Mm. I really like that piece about staying connected and not feeling like we have to do it on our own, because that stiff upper lip that I believe it's Charlie that mentioned before, that's a culture that we're raised up on. Suck it up, buttercup. Mark and I have heard that often. You know, just literally, we don't need to see your hurt. You just show me the smile and then move on. So, you know, sometimes the socialization is such that we don't feel like it's okay to reach out and let people know when things are going wrong. We have a facade that we want to hold up. We want people not to be able to understand that we're going through something that is overwhelming. So yeah, the staying connected, the reaching out, and it was mentioned on the panel about the intuition, that gut feeling when you see Mark. You mentioned you kind of sense when someone feels safe. You might not even know the person, or you see something on the internet, or you hear about something and just tweaks you. I would ask that people pay attention to that, because that's the gut telling you. It's a really primal thing. It doesn't even sometimes make sense in the head. I've been approached by complete strangers that had no idea maybe what I did or anything, but they just felt like they could speak with me. So it's really key to pay attention to that. We'll be putting up a few resources for people as well. You know, it's funny what little it takes to offer a lifeline in a circumstance when we're in crisis. It takes very, very little. It doesn't have to save the whole boat. Sometimes we just need to, you know, get a bucket of that water out of the boat and start with that bucket. And one of those areas is just our own physical, you know, fortitude and ability to take care of our body so that our mind can keep up. And that's why I'm glad, Michelle, that you're here, because sometimes, you know, we can leave that one behind. You know, there are a lot of other things that are, you know, important and to take care of. And especially if we're not used to the physical, as soon as you hear exercise, it's like, nope, not me. I myself, I've been in the gym for, you know, I think I was born in the gym. I just love the gym. But I also know that for some people, just the thought of exercise, not happening. What would you recommend?
Yeah, you know, it's I hear that all the time. There are people that will say things like, you know, well, I hated gym class when I was growing up, or they have bad associations, they didn't get picked for teams or things like that. I think especially now that when you talk about exercise, you want to talk about it as an incredibly important, valuable form of self-care, you know, and we can kind of combine our exercise with our meditation, meaning it's sort of like a moving meditation. So something as simple as being able to walk outside right now. You can do that, I mean, in this case, with people that are living in your household, or if you're by yourself, just enjoy the movement. You know, sometimes we get stuck in our thoughts, we get stuck in our moods, and all it takes is just the movement of our bodies, that dynamic, vibrant nature that is really inherent in all of us, to remind us that, hey, you know, feel a little bit better, you know, because now everyone's trying to protect themselves, and rightfully so, but you can't insulate so much that you isolate from other people entirely. So, you know, and of course, a lot of people have heard about exercise and the endorphins and things like that. But I think now when you go outside, if the weather stays fairly decent, you can appreciate that we're actually moving a little bit more towards spring. You can appreciate nature, the birds, the flowers, and again, the movement in your body. And I think if you really focus, you'll notice a certain clarity in your mind and even within your body, which is really, really helpful.
Thank you for that. I have a question that I want to pass on to you with regards to being mobile when you have mobility issues, when it due to injuries or due to age,
Oh,
all kinds of things. When you have those challenges and you really do not look forward to moving too much, what do you do then?
yeah. Well, first thing is to forgive yourself for not exactly jumping up and down or thinking this is the greatest thing, you know, opportunity of my life. It could be something that you approach with a fair bit of dread. And I know myself, I had an injury last summer, and you know, I was hobbling around on crutches for a while, and it was really hard. So to anyone, depending on the mobility issue, whether it is age or injury, there's always something you can do, right? So for example, I had a broken my knee. It was a knee surgery. So I could still do things, for example, with my upper body. You know, I could still, you know, practice healing in terms of the movement that I had. So the thing to focus on is you know, devote this time to yourself and understand what you can do. Again, you know, when you're, especially with an injury, you're focused on what you cannot do. Focus on what you can do, and you'd be surprised at what you can do. Again, from a physical standpoint, it might be very clear, but also mentally, and if you've got the space or location or the equipment, you'd be surprised what you can do with just a little bit. And just to address the aging part of it too, I've had that happen a lot over the years where people say, you know, I'm too old for this, I don't want to hurt myself, I don't need to do this anymore. And, you know, my question is not directly to them in this way, but it's like, at what point did you stop taking care of yourself or caring about yourself? Because nobody really ever does. everybody wants the best for themselves. And usually there's a little bit of something that's happened that has sort of put them off a little bit. And, you know, part of my role or anybody else's role in exercise is to help people, you know, transition. Maybe what you did in your 20s, 30s, or 40s is not necessarily what you want or can do in later years, but that doesn't mean you can't do anything. So the key is to focus in on your why you want to be active, what it's going to bring to you, and then find someone that can help you, because there's a lot of things that you can do. And I have a fair bit of experience in this. So if anyone has those types of questions, we can always talk at some point later.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that, Michelle. Because I find that there have been a few, you know, the feedback has been great. And when it comes to the mobility or the exercise, the physical portion, that's often a question, you know, how do you get creative if you've got four walls that you're looking at, you don't want to go outside or you cannot go outside? You know, how do you actually address that? So we'll come back to you in a minute for that. But I want to talk about the mental state, which is a really, really good, point to make about the perspective on exercise, or how it is that you may stigmatize the movement in the first place. It's really tough to do something that we really, really, really don't want to do. It's really tough. Speaking of which, I want to actually skip over to another topic here quickly about not wanting to do like homework and kids because that's not quite the perfect segue, but I'm gonna go there because there's this question here that has to do with you know, the children and the schooling. So I guess to put context around the question, during school, just getting homework done when the bulk of the schooling is happening in a building that's away from you, it can be tough to get children to do homework. How do you get children, all those kids, to do their homework? Are you getting the kids to do their homework?
I am getting them to do homework. Our day is still very structured, but I'm kind of rolling with the punches. We still wake up and start education first. Otherwise, they will jump right into the electronics and everything else. So we keep our day going pretty much the same. And if they're having a bad day, then I just roll with it. I'm still addressing any fears that come up. I try to be as honest as possible and discuss it with them. I don't kind of push them to the side when they have some fears. There's some anxiety coming up a little bit with the 9 and 10 and 7-year-old, and it was involving missing their friends and the teachers. And I mean, in the beginning, you know, no school, yay! But now they're missing school. So we've been having some Zoom play dates, which has been pretty interesting. Only with one child we haven't been able to connect with some of the friends, but that's been going pretty well. I've been cutting off electronics about half an hour to 45 minutes before bedtime because I find it allows them to get a better sleep. Better sleep means they have a better day. Anxiety and stress is a little bit lower, and I don't do physical punishment. That was something I was having a discussion with some parents. There are some parents that still do physical punishment. I don't believe in physical punishment. I don't think that that's going to help during this COVID-19 period right now, personally. So that's something that I want to make sure to note, that it doesn't help anything as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to make it into a discussion, a topic, Eric, and there's
maybe
some
another
back
table
and
talk
forth that I was
anyway.
having. And what I would suggest to parents is to take care of yourself. Get enough sleep. I know it's very hard, especially when we're working and looking after the kids and doing education and feeding them 24/7 because they're eating like there's no tomorrow. So take care of yourself. If you can get as much sleep as possible, eat as healthy as possible, parents. I mean, taking care of yourself is showing them how to take care of themselves, and it helps you take care of them as well. And remember to breathe. I believe in a past table talk, we were discussing about how important it is to take those deep breaths and stop in the moments. One big thing that's new for me in this household of many people is when circumstances arise, we first think, does the problem have immediate danger? That's the first thing, is we stop and say, okay, is anyone gonna lose a limb in the next few seconds? Then you think about how you feel about the problem. I'm pretty upset right now. I'm going to stop and pause and breathe. And is the situation permanent? So you think, is it something that they can handle themselves, or is it something that I have to step in? And the kids have been handling a lot more themselves because they need to learn to work through that. Normally we separate and quickly jump in, but given that we're all the same household, they have to learn to get along, and we have to learn to get along with each other. So those are some of the things that I do. Education is still going, not as hard as it was in the beginning, where I was like, look at my schedule, everyone. We're doing school like it's school. But no, we're doing school according to how we kind of did a structure that fit with each child. And so we got a nice plan that allowed and they were involved with the planning as well. And that allowed everyone to be happy and settled. So yeah, it's going pretty good. Visual education is good. They're getting things done. Some things we say not today, but some things that they know that there's, like, for example, math, we got to do a little bit every day, or else they get overwhelmed with having to do everything at one time. So it's going pretty good, the different levels of education. I'm learning some stuff. They're learning some stuff. We're rolling with it.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. What I find remarkable is how many things are in common with all the aspects of this topic. Like, we think if we talk about parents, I don't have kids, I don't have to listen to this. But the thing is, there's stuff that Day has spoken about that is applicable across the board. It's not necessarily just parenting, right? The fact that we're all in the same space and everyone's got their very unique needs. Different languages maybe have to be used, different approaches, different needs for space. One person may deal with anxiety, one person may be dealing with depression, another person may be dealing with both. You have all kinds of stuff going on. And so what was very clear to me in what you said, outside of the parenting piece, which is very integral, very great notes, was just being able to see each other and just understand that the needs are different and roll with it. Like, the rules have to change because the situation has. So I love the fluidity, how you're going with the flow there. Go ahead, Day.
Just one thing I wanted to add as well is, because being a visual artist, I know that a lot of my supplies and a lot of the resources that I would have in order to create my art is not inside my house. It was not accessible to me. So I got really blocked, really down about not being able to do what my passion was, which for different people might be different things. For me, it was art. So one of the suggestions that was made by one of the other house members was, let's take out your tools that you do have and let's all do the art together. So I got to get some of my visual art out there. At the same time, it turned into a family event. So you may have to think creatively when it comes to taking care of your needs as well. It might help to share your needs with other people and let everyone come together with that specific thing. So it could be music. It could, I mean, if you like to make music and something you do by yourself, maybe this is a time to open it up to everyone. So that is one of the points I wanted to definitely throw out to everybody. It was an amazing experience. We have all our art displayed across the dining room wall, which is a lot of us. A lot of art. It's like an art show there. And yeah, it was nice. It was really
I hope
nice
we
to do.
captured that, because it went robot-y from my end, but I hope we did capture that. But I captured most of it, the creativity piece and thinking outside of the box and involving family. I want to go to Janelle on that topic, actually, of family, because in times pre-COVID, when it came to connecting families, or just even communicating and interacting, it was obviously on a different level. Right now, we have moms that are not with their children, depending on what child, age that child is. Siblings that aren't together. We just have so many people who are lamenting the fact that what they need right now and connecting with their family, they can't get because of COVID-19. So in light of that, how do you, as a family support specialist, actually do your work when we're all shut in?
Well, I'm connecting with my clients over the phone and going back to social media. I encourage them to do the same and find ways to connect. There's so many different platforms, and it's possible to connect and do things like Day is doing with connecting through Zoom and having Zoom play dates, which have been quite a savior for a lot of my families. I think a lot of families feel guilty for using social media to connect because of all this talk about screen time, and we're not supposed to give our young children screen time. But I think we have to think about the situation that we're in. We have to think about what we are offering them. We are not hunting our kids down and saying, talk to them for 6 hours while I do other things. We're being interactive, we're connecting. And also what someone else said, I can't remember who at this point, but someone said that we're modeling for children, and that's really important too. We're showing them that we can adapt to changing situations. We're showing them that we have emotions. We miss people, even labeling those emotions for our little ones, because they're still learning what it means to miss somebody. They're learning what it means to feel sad and angry. So let's label that for them. Let's show them how we sit with those feelings of disconnection, and let's show them how we cope with it. Whether it is that we need to cry for a little bit, or we make that phone call to that family member, that friend that we miss. If you do one of those drive-by, if you're able to drive by parties and say hello, there's so many different creative ways to connect. And it's a great opportunity to model for children how we can deal with those big emotions in creative and different ways.
Thank you for that. The modeling piece is so key. I think it's very, very easy, and we so often forget that being the change that we want to see. It sounds corny sometimes, but literally that's how we affect the biggest change, and especially when it comes to children and they're in their developmental stages, seeing that we actually mean what we're talking about and they see that it works is really key. I have a question here that actually pertains to Michelle, and we're just going to veer away from the family piece, but this pertains to the entire family with regards to exercise and healthy eating. How do you, overcome that all or nothing type of mentality? So you fall off the wagon with the exercise and the healthy eating, and you're not human. You're human, but how do you not get upset with yourself and then sabotage the efforts that you made before you fell off the wagon?
Yeah, and it's people are really hard on themselves
Oh, you're frozen, but that's
too.
okay.
And I guess from a
So,
family
Michelle, I'm going to interrupt just for a moment because you froze for a moment. I'm wondering if perhaps you can, if you can hear me, if you could take off the video for a moment to answer the question so we can make sure to get everything.
Modeling, right? It's ideal if parents can model healthy.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I feel like I missed so much juice just now. So what I'm going to ask is
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind, would you mind taking off your video and repeating what you just said so we can make sure to capture your answer to the question?
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So
Okay.
that question pertaining to, not being too hard on ourselves.
Yeah, no, and people are generally really hard on themselves, and you've got to give yourself some slack. I think during this time, we preface so many statements nowadays, like in these times, at this time, but I feel most people are realizing we're more the same than we are different, and we all have very similar challenges right now, and everyone is sort of fighting a little bit to find, okay, where are my bearings? How am I going to find my stability in this quote unquote new normal? Again, modeling is fantastic. Modeling in terms of modeling the behavior you want as you do it. So if you're focusing on healthy snacks and getting the family involved in meal preparation, for example, in terms of what is going to be for dinner, and shopping these days, you're probably not going to go as a family per se, but you can certainly cook while you're all together. And as far as exercise is concerned, everybody can get outside now. I've seen a lot of families. It's been great seeing younger children with their family, with their parents, bike riding. It's been lovely. Or blowing bubbles in the park or throwing a ball around. The thing is, the getting out of the house, I think, is a savior for everybody. Everybody needs that space, and we can't deny the fact that kids are going through this in very similar ways that we are. They just can't articulate it as much, and we just expect that by allowing them to go run around or play just fine. So the time that you're spending doing some kind of movement or exercise, that could be a dance party, that sport, that can be bike riding, is also a good chance to chat and see, you know, it doesn't have to get too deep. How are you feeling? What would you like to do? What would make you feel better, for example? And it can help bring the family a little bit closer. You know, even if you are already close, it can help because everyone is going to feel seen and heard.
Mhm. I love the fact that you say, you know, one, don't be too hard on yourself. Just expand. We have this idea of what everything needs to look like. And I'm hearing from all of the panelists that it's our ability to just allow and relax for us to understand that it doesn't need to look like that. I don't have to be like pumping iron like I did in the gym years ago, because I go through that too. I don't pump iron the way I used to. And I'm like, sometimes very hard on myself because of that. It's like, I'm not really exercising. This is an exercise, until I bust a sweat and I like choke myself out with a bar in the gym. I'm not really exercising. But I love what you said about no, like don't be so hard on yourself. And the smallest thing that we do is actually part of the movement and part of the exercise and also part of the time that we're spending with each other as family. I love that. I want to go to Helen for a moment because you had a point to make. I don't know how far out we are from when you want to make the point. Is it related to the exercise piece?
It's not related to the exercise piece.
Okay.
Back to something Mark said.
Oh my goodness.
And
Okay,
yeah, it was
go
a
for
while
it.
back.
Go for it, Helen.
And it's really about, and I also acknowledge you being thankful and giving a shout out to the people who are participating who we don't see. But I wanted to kind of just check in with, I would have to say in particular women, because I do a lot of work with women. In addition to what I do as a professor, I do a lot of work with women who are classified as vulnerable, who are in situations where they've been abused. And I'm really, really concerned about the fact that right now, as we know, with this current situation with COVID, many, many women are in spaces. You talked about safe spaces for many women. And I recall my own experience many, many years ago, having survived that. That's not my current space. But I know that my safe space was not where I lived. And I'm thinking, what about women today? Not so much just children, or maybe men may experience it as well. But I have to be honest, I'm a bit selfish. What about the women today who, because of the shutdown, are not feeling that their space is safe and don't have the power and the strength to reach out as we're encouraging them to do, because their phone is being monitored, their laptop is being monitored, they don't have a safe word that they can use to say to somebody, help, I need help. So to me, this is an issue that
That is a very real spikes in domestic violence. And before I turn the floor over to you, Mark, I will say that we have an upcoming webinar, a table talk that's on June 19th that focuses on this. Now, the key about that table talk is that none of it actually points to the topic of domestic violence, not in the heading of the table talk, not in the content that's written down. It's only in the verbiage. And the reason why is precisely for what Helen meant, that, you know, for someone who is monitoring communications, the use of devices, we're creating a table talk is on offering some support and some resources in a way not someone may be frozen. Oh, my internet has gone wacky a little bit. So while I wait for it to come back online, I think I got everybody back. What I'll say is that that's a fantastic question, and turn the floor over to Mark to address Helen's question.
Um, I don't know if I have an answer. I wish I did. So I think, you know, this is, so there are two, there, I think this problem is so layered because I think one of the things that happens is, and this is a hard thing to say because it is so filled with despair and it's so problematic, is that people who prior to COVID found a way to survive within a violent relationship, I think they have built up resilience that it's hard to understand, right? The additional worry I have is people that were in healthy relationships, and COVID has been the tipping point where they went from homes they had known for years to be safe, that they thought were safe spaces with safe people, who have now become unsafe people and unsafe spaces. And it's such a heartbreaking thing, because at least, you know, prior to this, we were always able to say, if you had a safe person, you could leave, if you could, you know, get the sports to leave. And now we're in a space that even prevents that, right? There's concern where now people are being forced to pick, is my life at risk at home, or if I leave and go to a shelter or go somewhere else, is my life now at risk because of COVID that might be present there? And I don't know what the answer is, right? I think that it's, you know, it's one of those things where, on the sad thing is it's almost much like patients with that are living with COVID. You hope that they're able to survive past the ventilator, right? And that's probably the closest analogy, is that we're hoping that people that live with violence in their life, that they have enough resilience that when we reach a point that it is safe for us to sort of be more engaged with them, that we can go and do more. Because it's such a tricky thing, and Kata would know this, is that I look at it, even if from the other angle, if I was still a police officer who's been to a home that I know has a history of domestic violence, and they're not calling, it's silence. Kata, we know this very well, that the silence is also eerie, that you might want to knock on the door to check on the well-being of this person with good intention, and you might actually flare it up, right? So it is such a perilous time. How do we, in this current time, support victims of violence? And I think the sort of only way we can is to keep them in the conversation, that they're not forgotten, and to sort of wait with those open arms to say, like, however it is, a signal can reach to us. We don't know what that signal is, but we're here and we're eager to embrace you. And we're hoping that even by talking, we don't instigate, right? Because this is the power dynamic with abusers, is that they might hear us talk about how much we love and support the person they abuse, and they use that as a, oh, you think your friends are going to come and get you? You just listen to this, let me remind you, right? And this is where we're at, right? We're in this very tumultuous time as to how do we do enough to support while doing as little as we can to instigate. And where is that sweet spot, right?
And that's the interesting thing about all of this, because this remains true with regards to domestic violence. Challenges remain true for people who are dealing with developmental challenges in the home with children. There are many things that are being spotlit with COVID-19. Doesn't mean that it was created as a result of COVID-19. Some of them have been exacerbated, but some of them preceded it. What I really like about what you said, Mark, is that there are coping mechanisms that people who have a history in these various areas of challenge have created or have been using. And through COVID-19, they at least have that. The people who are just encountering these challenges and may not be able to access resources, have no clues what the resources may even be, and cannot go through the normal channels to get out there and find them. Those are the people that we really have to think about as we share, as we talk. We're not trying to solve all of this. I think part of the challenge and what makes us really hopeless sometimes or feel like it's just too much or overwhelming is that we think we've got to solve it right now. And that's really not it. It's just us doing what we can in the moment that we can, by virtue of who we are. That's it. As long as I can remain true to that and not think I need to go out and put a cape on and save the world, which most police officers, we have that as our mentality. Whether we're helpers in therapy or we're helpers as, in whatever we do, we think we got to go out and save a whole mass of people before what we're doing is valuable or worthy. But as little as smiling at someone who is in a supermarket, who's in a grocery store, who's looking down and whose shoulders are slumped, and just catching that person's eye and smiling at them and saying, hello, or how are you? Or just looking at them and letting them know, I see you, may have ripple effects that we have no idea what those ripple effects are. And that is still important. It doesn't have to be the whole, I'm gonna go in and save this person from the fire, like a firefighter thing. So, that domestic violence piece is a huge piece. And sometimes people we feel so overwhelmed by the magnitude of what can be happening for so many people that we just become paralyzed and we don't know where to start. And a starting point is simply just doing what's in your power in the moment. From a smile to someone, to gifting something that you don't need, to sharing information, to, whatever it may be. It could be so many different things. But I appreciate the question, Helen, because it's a question when it comes to knowing someone who may be in an unsafe space. And I know that we're at 3:00. There are a couple more questions that I just want to get to because we don't have to wrap immediately at 3. And I warned you guys, panelists, I said we may go over because we tend to go over. So you can feel free if you have to go. And I really appreciate your time. I just want to get to some of the comments and some of the questions that have popped up. Let's see, I'm going to just read off. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, you guys, okay. To Helen. I'm a student at Ryerson. I have to brush up skills to get a job. Researching 4 months, work term essay. I have to see how I'm going to get my iron working. The person would like to contact professionals that he or she met earlier in the school year, connect with mentors. Okay. With COVID, they let you assess your grades and how you want the grades to be reflected on the transcript. The person doesn't know what's going to happen with their graduation. I guess, long story short, they're just really kind of in limbo after all the work that they've done. How does this person keep it together? Oh, you're muted.
I know. I keep going to the wrong thing. I cannot speak for the college that I'm at, and I know they're still planning on having a graduation. The graduation will be virtual. So I don't know if I'm answering the student's question. So she's asking whether she's going to graduate or...
Let's see. It looks like it's not clear what's even going to happen with graduation. It looks like there's a project, a lot of work that's been prepped preceding COVID-19. And now with COVID-19, that there are grade assessments that are happening, but nothing is in line. It seems like it's sporadic, and it's hard for this person to keep track of what's happening because they're not getting the information. He or she is not getting the information that's necessary. And I guess it's limbo whether they're even going to graduate this year. So they're stressed. How do they keep it together?
Well, I guess to me, the main thing might be to manage what she can manage. And I get that she's feeling stressed. He or she is feeling stressed not knowing about where they are in terms of grades and graduation and so forth, but what can he or she manage? What can be controlled at this point? Have they submitted everything? Can they pull together maybe references, letters from professors who've taught them? What is it that they can do? How can they be proactive and also know that I don't think they're going to be hung out to dry. I know with the college that I'm with, we had a directive that we were not to fail anyone unless they absolutely didn't show up for class at all. But if they showed up for class, whether it was pre the online learning or after online learning, if they did not pass, they received a different acronym that sort of put them in a position where they were then given an opportunity to work on whatever they needed to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that with most colleges, there's probably an understanding that with everything that happened with COVID-19, that there are adjustments that the senior team, of which I'm not a part anymore, used to be once upon a time, but I think the senior team is looking at how can we help them, because I don't think they're that cold as to not want to. If this person is in their final semester, I can't see them really, hanging the person out to dry. I don't think so. So maybe, being proactive, what can he or she do in terms of the pieces that they have? Can they create, maybe begin to create an e-portfolio or maybe add to their e-portfolio? Can they create a LinkedIn page? Can they connect with professors? Can they do those pieces while they're kind of trying to manage this graduation piece? What they control.
I
So if they
really,
put that on.
really like that.
And
appreciate
the
that.
other thing that I would say too, if I can just interject one last thing,
Go
is
ahead.
contacting either some of their professors and or chair, or many colleges have a student success advisor, contacting that person, sort of maybe, reaching out to as many people as he or she can.
Absolutely. And I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too.
Proactive piece is really key. Paying attention to what one can control, because I noticed that common theme throughout all of the panelists speaking is reworking our idea of what these things are. I see a note from Mark just saying the best, the thing for us to do is shift, for instance, what exercise is, in answer to the question before about not being too hard on oneself. Shifting what exercise is it for wellness or for traditional goals of exercise, muscle, weight loss, etc.? Great point. When it comes to what Day mentioned with regards to the homework thing, having homework before electronics, it has to be like this. Well, shift that. Janelle, you mentioned shifting the way that we connect. We used to be really judgmental about the screen time thing, and now screen time is how we connect. So shifting that and the meaning behind it. And Charlie, same thing. Like you guys have all been talking about, shift our perception when it comes to mental wellness and connecting with each other and not going so hard on ourselves. Really key stuff. So what I'm getting about keeping it together means really shifting the way that we're viewing life and what it means to be together and what it means to be successful. Keeping it together doesn't mean keeping it perfect. Keeping it together means, paying attention to what we need as individuals, satisfying that so that we could be of help to others. And I see a couple of notes here. One from Charlie. It's a fantastic time to help empower especially the women who are being abused right now. And I agree with that. This is an opportunity because I feel like the lining here that's silver-ish is that the awareness is really heightened because we've all been traumatized by this happening. COVID-19 has now put us in a position where we're highly receptive We're able to be more compassionate, more understanding. There was a time not too long ago where one could say, oh, that's not happening to me. It's not really happening in my area right here. So that's too bad. But, right? Now it's like, no, you look on YouTube, someone's talking about COVID-19, you understand because you're going through it too. It's halfway across the world and it's happening to everybody. So just, it is an empowering time. It feels tough, and it is tough, but it's also an empowering time. Let's see. The best, Mark is saying, the best we might be able to do is share insight as to how we all build our resiliency. And I couldn't agree with that more. And that's one of the reasons why we had a topic of resiliency, and we will be having it again. People sharing how do we make it? How do we get through this? How do we get through not being able to pay bills, losing a job, being in a space that doesn't feel safe, knowing someone who's in an unsafe space? How do we get through this? And the answer is we do it together. Someone mentioned it before, we do it together. And our ability to connect is the primary thing. We have had a fantastic table talk today. I want to thank you all for being here. The audience, you guys, thank you so much for the questions that you brought. You've answered some questions that I've had in my mind by asking the question that you asked of these panelists. The panelists, thank you all for being here, for giving your gems of wisdom and your experiences, and being so authentic, because it's the authenticity that actually conveys the messages, nothing else. So once again, thank you. And I wish you the best. Today is Friday, isn't it? Yeah, so have a great weekend. We're all losing time. Take care, be well informed, safe, and empowered. Take care.